At -30°C, the world outside turns deadly. Every second outside can mean death. That night, in the middle of a raging blizzard, a lonely man sat inside his wooden cabin, thinking he was safe from the storm. But then suddenly he heard scratching at the frosted window. When he turned, he froze. Staring back at him was a German shepherd, her fur coated in ice, her breath fogging the glass. Behind her, two tiny puppies shivered, their paws sinking into the snow. She wasn't just looking, she was begging. In that moment, the man faced a choice that would change everything. Stay with us because this unbelievable story will leave you in tears. Before we start, make sure to hit like, share, and subscribe. And really, I'm curious, where are you watching from? Drop your country name in the comments. I love seeing how far our stories travel. The forest groaned under the weight of winter. -30°C. Even the trees seemed frozen in silence. Their branches bowed under thick blankets of snow. It wasn't just cold outside. It was deadly. In conditions like this, survival depended on shelter, fire, and luck. Inside a small wooden cabin, a man sat in near darkness. The crackling fireplace the only source of warmth and light. The storm outside howled louder, yet within the walls there was stillness. For years, he had chosen solitude, a life far from the noise of cities. Nights like this reminded him of why there was a strange peace in the isolation. Yet peace had a price. Loneliness crept in like frost, slow but relentless. As the wind battered the walls, he leaned back in his chair, unaware that fate was about to shatter the silence and change everything. A sudden sound broke the man's quiet thoughts, a faint scratching at the window. At first he dismissed it as a loose branch whipping against the glass, but then came a low whimper. He froze, cup halfway to his lips, listening. The sound came again, sharper. This time, insistent. Slowly he turned toward the frosted window. What he saw made him sit upright in shock. Pressed against the icy glass was the face of a German shepherd, her eyes wide with desperation. Her breath fogged the pain, melting little circles in the frost. Snow clung to her thick fur, weighing it down in icy clumps. She raised a paw, pressing it against the window as if pleading. The man's heartbeat quickened. Then his eyes widened further. Behind her, barely visible in the swirling storm, were two tiny puppies. Their small bodies shivered violently, paws sinking into the snowdrift. They looked weak, their ears drooping, their breaths shallow. The shepherd turned her head toward them, then back to the man, her gaze filled with urgency. She wasn't just looking in, she was begging. For a moment, the man remained frozen in place. He had seen stray dogs before, but never like this. Something about the scene outside struck deeper than pity. It felt like a test. The man's breath caught as he stared at the figures outside. His instincts pulled in two directions at once. On one hand, his heart clenched at the sight of the German shepherd and her shivering pups. On the other, reason whispered caution. Strays could be dangerous, carrying disease or lashing out from fear. In a storm like this, however, leaving them outside meant certain death. He stood, slowly, his boots crunching against the wooden floor as he stepped closer to the frosted glass. The shepherd's eyes followed him with intensity, her paw still raised against the window. The puppies whimpered, sinking deeper into the snow. He felt the weight of their gaze press against him, almost as if they understood their fate rested in his hands. For a long moment he hovered in hesitation. He thought about the supplies he had. Food was limited, the cabin small. He lived alone for a reason, and taking them in would change everything. Yet, as another blast of wind rattled the cabin, sending the puppies stumbling in the snow, his chest tightened painfully. He whispered under his breath, almost as if speaking to himself, "If I don't open this door, they won't make it." The decision loomed hard against mind, compassion, against survival. With a heavy breath, the man finally moved to the door. His hand hovered over the handle as a storm's roar pressed against the cabin. Then, with a firm pull, he opened it. A blast of icy wind cut into the room, carrying snow with it, and in the doorway stood the German shepherd. She didn't hesitate. She stepped forward, nudging her puppies inside before lowering her head in gratitude. The man quickly shut the door, trapping the warmth inside. The shepherd shook herself, scattering clumps of snow under the wooden floor while her pups collapsed near the fireplace, their tiny bodies trembling. He crouched beside them, gently brushing ice from their fur. Their ribs were faintly visible, a cruel sign of hunger and hardship. As the firelight flickered across their faces, he noticed scratches along the shepherd's flank, old scars hidden beneath her thick coat. The pups, though weak, leaned against her, their eyes half closing, as if they finally felt safe. The man swallowed hard. These weren't just strays. They were survivors of something far harsher than the storm outside. Sitting back, he felt a weight settle in his chest. He had let them in to save their lives. But as the shepherd looked at him with quiet trust, he realized something else. They might just be here to save his. The cabin grew warmer. The storm's howl, muffled by the thick wooden walls. The man sat near the fire, watching the German shepherd curl protectively around her puppies. Their tiny breasts rose and fell in rhythm, soothed by the crackle of flames. For the first time in years, his cabin didn't feel empty. He leaned back in his chair, his eyes lingering on the shepherd. She lifted her head, meeting his gaze. In her eyes he didn't see fear or aggression, only exhaustion, trust, and something deeper, gratitude. It stirred something inside him, a feeling he had buried long ago. He reached out slowly, and when his fingers brushed her damp fur, she didn't flinch. Instead, she let out a low sigh as though she understood she was safe. Memories crept in, unbidden. The man thought of his past, the family he had once had, the life he had walked away from. Loneliness had become his constant companion. But as he sat there now, watching the fragile pups snuggle into their mother's warmth, he realized he wasn't truly alone anymore. The storm raged outside, unforgiving, but inside, something powerful was taking root. A bond was forming, unspoken, undeniable. And in that moment, he knew this meeting wasn't chance. It was fate. Dawn broke, slowly, painting the snow in pale shades of blue and silver. The storm had passed, leaving behind silence so deep it pressed against the cabin walls. The man stirred from his chair, stiff from the long night, and looked toward the fire. The German shepherd was still there, her body curled protectively around her pups, their tiny chest rising and falling in steady rhythm. A sense of calm filled the room, unlike anything he had felt in years. He rose to his feet, moving quietly so as not to disturb them. For a long moment he simply stood there watching. The decision he had wrestled with last night no longer seemed like a question. He couldn't let them go, not back into a world that had nearly killed them. His cabin, once a place of isolation, now had meaning. It was no longer just his refuge. It was theirs too. The shepherd lifted her head as he approached, her tail giving a slow, hopeful wag. He crouched down and whispered, "You're home now." The words surprised him, but once spoken they felt right. She leaned forward, resting her head against his hand, and in that simple gesture, a promise was made. Days turned into weeks and weeks into months. The pups grew strong there, playful energy filling the once quiet cabin with life. The man found himself smiling more, talking aloud again, his solitude replaced by companionship. And every time he looked at the shepherd, he remembered the night she had begged for shelter. It hadn't just been her life he saved. It was his own.